Good morning. We're going to do a little, in our last class here, we're going to do a little meditation as we've done all the time to set our motivation, to calm our mind, get familiar with this art of meditation. So sit comfortably, relax your body, relax your mind, place your mindfulness on the breathing in front, to the exclusion of everything else. And then follow one inhalation up to your nostrils as though it's going to the crown of your head, down to your heart chakra. We say the side nadis. And just let your attention dwell on your mental consciousness. Let go of your breathing, your attention to the breathing. So we're trying to see, to get a mental image of the clear light nature of the mind. Take your attention away from the objective thoughts, the cloud-like thoughts in the space of your mind. Let them diminish and disappear. Focus on the spaciousness around them, even where they are, even if there's a tenacious thought there, recognizing it could not be there unless the mind had this nature of being clear and knowing, as though turning your back on the object and looking back at the mind itself. dive down into the cave of your heart chakra, as though withdrawing your attention from the five senses to just the sixth sense, the mental consciousness. So in a similar way to meditation on emptiness, what is appearing to your mind is some mental image of a vacuity, the mere lack of obstructing contact. That is to say, not space, but the lack of obstruction of the mind to the emerging and disappearing of mental events. And as we've mentioned before, recognizing this as our inner resource, our Buddha potential, conventional Buddha nature, what's called a developmental Buddha nature. When things are going wrong outside, to be able to come back to this little cave in your heart, not your beating heart, your heart chakra, it's the subtlemost mind there. This occasion of being able to view this and be inspired by this is due to having a life of leisure and endowment, which is fleeting, changing with every moment. Who knows if I will be here to teach the next course? Everything's uncertain. So to think, to use what time I have left with this immensely meaningful opportunity, having a life of leisure and endowment, I'm going to use it to practice the Dharma to the best of my ability. In particular, I'm going to participate in the class today to better understand the teachings of the Buddha, the Buddhist tenets, leading up to the finest view of the Madhyamaka, especially the Prasangika view, as an aid to developing bodhicitta, because if I understand selflessness and emptiness, I can recognize there's no self that needs to be cherished. I can engage in the equalizing and exchanging of self and others, develop bodhicitta, even try to develop that with a sense of the suffering nature of cyclic existence, sense of renunciation. So I'm going to listen to the teachings, participate in order to, with my end aim, in order to achieve the state of enlightenment, not for myself alone, but because then I can be totally free to help sentient beings, be actively engaged and effortlessly and spontaneously working to take them out of suffering with the most skillful method, lead them into the same state of enlightenment. Kind of participate in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And then relax. Bring your attention back to the here and now. There we go. So, with our, the thought to receive the inspiration of the Buddha's omniscient mind in the form of Manjushri, thinking of the interpretative Manjushri here in front of us, this image of red, yellow Manjushri. We'll say this prayer and request, praise to Manjushri. Homage to my Lama, my Guru and protector, Venerable Manjushri, who holds at his heart the Prajna Paramita Sutra, symbolic of his seeing all as it is, whose pure genius shines like the sun and clouded by the two obscurations, who with compassion like a father for his only child, teaches with 60-fold eloquence all beings imprisoned in cyclic existence, groping in the darkness of ignorance and overwhelmed by suffering, whose thunder-like proclamation of the perfection of wisdom arouses us from the stupor of our afflictions and frees us from the iron chains of karma, who wields wisdom's sword, vanquishing the darkness of ignorance, hewing down our every sprout of suffering. You who are primordially pure, gone to the end of the 10 grounds, finished the 10 grounds, the complete embodiment of every excellence, whose princely body is graced with 112 adornments. O Manjushri, to you I bow. Please dispel the darkness of my mind. As before, the mantra 21 times and then 108 times the D on one breath. Om Arabazanario, Barabazanario, 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 Barabazanario. Om Arabazanario, Barabazanario, Barabazanario, Barabazanario. Om Arabazanario, Barabazanario, 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 Barabazanario. Om Arabazanario. With a swallow of saliva, bring that seed syllable D down to your heart and let it merge with your subtlemost mind, your heart chakra. And dwell for a few moments in the unification of your mind and Guru Manjushri. Okay, there we go. So, it's our last class today in theory, hopefully in practice also. Any questions, observations? Tenzin Jagjub, you're there, I see.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. So, there's Karen. Good morning. So I hope you had a really great full moon day of Sakadawa. Some people just call it Sakadawa, but Sakadawa means the whole month. You can think of it as Dawa also means in Tibetan means moon, Chandra, like Chandra Kirti. So you could think of it as the moon of Saga. Saga doesn't mean Shakya like Shakyamuni or something. Saga is the name of the constellation in the Tibetan name of that constellation, Vishaka, that is, where the sun is supposedly in this month. And Kevin has a question.
In Thailand, they call it Vesak Day. I didn't know why.
Yeah, because of course, as I was saying, in Sanskrit, it's Vaishaka, and Pali is one of the vernaculars that existed at the time that the Buddha was living in India. And the Tibetan, the Indian king Ashoka, during his reign, several hundred years after the Buddha, his son and daughter, I think, both became ordained. He was a great sponsor of Buddhism and held a conclave in which the teachings of the Theravada were enshrined in Pali, which existed at the time of the Buddha and still exists till this day. Not spoken, it's kind of like speaking Latin in Italy. Latin is the classical language. People don't speak it so much. People know, are scholars of it and read it and so forth. But so in Pali, the fine details of Sanskrit were made more amenable to speaking. Like instead of saying karma, as we say in Sanskrit, it was said kama. And instead of dharma, it's dhamma. So I joke sometimes it's a little bit like John Kennedy speaking Sanskrit, right? Pak the ka and the ha vidyad. The R's are not so pronounced. So there were no conjunct in Pali. If there were two consonants in Sanskrit that were conjunct, right, one consonant after another, it was put into one, or the same consonant twice. So that's the reason that Vaishaka became Vesak or Vesak in Pali.
Thank you, It was also a public holiday here. Everything shuts down, no alcohol sales, anything.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm glad. I'm not sure if Bob's gone off to get his Pali book or what. His decision.
He made it to the temple for the big ceremony with the Theravadins.
Okay.
There was some indication that even Biden says something about basic.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's, random news,
That's what it is, more renowned in the world, because up until maybe 100 years ago, most of the scholarship about Buddhism was just Theravada Buddhism. And it even took scholars a while to recognize that the Mahayana Buddhism had a great validity and so forth. Ida, you have your hand up. You have a question or comment?
Yes, can you hear me? I hope
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Zoom doesn't quit on me. Okay, well, let me see if I formulate this, because I'm barely understanding things. You talked about the lack of a permanent, unitary, independent self. I understand that. Permanent, not changing moment by moment. Unitary, not made up of parts. Independent, not depending upon causes and conditions, correct? And then we have
right
of self-sufficient, substantially existent self. I understand self-sufficient, able to supply one's or its own needs without help. But is there a technical meaning, a special technical meaning for substantially existent, like currently existing materially, physically, truly, correctly? Is that the meaning of it? And
no.
Also, I have something else.
Okay.
Is there such a concept like selflessness of self-existence? like existing of or by itself, independent of any other being or cause? Is there such a concept in Buddhism? Selflessness of self-existence. Does that make sense?
Selflessness of self-existence.
Yes.
So let's do the first part first, and we'll come back.
Okay.
So when we talk about, in this context, when you talk about self-supporting, substantially existent, we've mentioned it a little bit before. Even in Vaibhashika and the lower schools, there's an understanding of two kinds of phenomena that are substantially existent and phenomena that are imputedly existent. So from their point of view, a substantial existent thing is like a flower, a tree that has a certain kind of existence that you can, in the case of seeing, let's say, we use that as an example, that you can just seeing that you see the so-called substance of it, and that it is perceivable that way. There are other kinds of things like forest, which is a combination of trees, right? You have to, you just see one tree and it's not legitimate to say that you see the forest. You have to see the parts of the forest, that is the say composition or the assembly of trees, to say that you've seen the forest. So a forest from their point of view is imputedly existent or designatedly existent. Difference between substantial. So from the Prasangika point of view, everything is like that. Even the tree has parts, and you have to to see the tree. There's not the same kind of meaning as the lower schools talk about substantially existent. So substantially existent means that there is some kind of sense of being there, the substance of it, without needing to see other things. So that gives a kind of feeling of what, this, from the Prasangika point of view, this is the gross selflessness of persons, the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. From the lower schools, everything below Prasangika, even the Svatantrika, Madhyamaka, and the Chittamatra, and the Sautrantika, and the Vaibhashika, that's the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person is the number one, is the actual subtle selflessness of persons. So the sense of that is one in which as you look in your mind, and of course you can go much deeper than this, but there does seem to be, even Prasangika would say, there does seem to be a sense of a self which is set up, is substantially existent. It doesn't seem to depend, to need to see other things. Jeffrey Hopkins in his writings has explained that, and I can't remember seeing the actual Tibetan of this, but they say there's a sense of the self as being not one of the aggregates, but something, and not, it's sort of like it is, an example, if you have a sales force, a bunch of salespeople, salesmen or saleswomen or salespeople, the chief salesman is not is not different than the other salesman, but it's not any one of the others. It's sort of like the chief. So from a Prasangika point of view, to recognize that appearance to the mind and recognize through logic that it doesn't exist like that, does subdue certain, diminish some of your afflictions, but it does not have the capacity to eradicate them, to cease them. It doesn't lead to true cessation of any delusions. Whereas the lower tenets, all of them believe that realization is sufficient for you to escape from cyclic existence. And your other question, I wasn't quite sure what you were saying. Could you say it again?
Let me try to say it again.
Okay.
This concept that came up to me, a selflessness of self-existence.
So we don't say a selflessness of self-existence.
Or emptiness?
You can self-existence is the
well, it's existing by itself, independent of any other being or cause. Would that be it?
So there's different selves that are postulated here. There's a self that's postulated as one that the Vedic schools believe that there's a permanent, partless, and independent self, an Atma, like the great Atma, or an individual, your own individual self. That could be called a self. There is a self that appears to be self-supporting, substantially existent. That's a subtler self, a subtler sense of self. That's also refuted, and we call the refutation of that is called selflessness. The refutation of a permanent, partless, and independent self, the refutation of that is also called selflessness. The lower schools would call that the gross selflessness of persons. They would call the refutation of a self-supporting, substantially existent person as the subtle selflessness of persons. So Prasangika takes away the permanent, partless, and independent and says that doesn't do much at all. That's just an intellectually mandated, acquired conception of the self. There is an innate sense of a self-supporting, substantially existent person. Prasangika says there is, and Madhyamaka says also, that there is a sense of self as being truly existent. And Prasangika fine-tunes that to leave out some of the Svatantrika point of view. There is a sense of a self as being innately existent or naturally existent. The refutation of that is, from the Prasangika point of view, is called the selflessness of persons. So we generally, when we say selflessness of persons, we're selflessness, we're talking about the selflessness of persons or the selflessness of other phenomena other than the person itself, such as your aggregates, or trees, or my computer, or your car, the selflessness of the emptiness of love, the emptiness of anything, your actions, walking, and so forth. So if we talk about the selflessness of persons, what we're doing is we're refuting a particular kind of appearance to the mind as a person. So we don't talk about the selflessness of self-existence. We talk about the selflessness of persons or the selflessness of phenomena. So Bob, you have a clarification or a question?
Yeah, I sort of wonder if Aida wasn't thinking in what we would call in other terms the emptiness of emptiness, which you could translate as
is that what you're thinking of?
Okay, yes, thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Good. Okay, Bob.
All right. Food for thought. Oh my goodness.
You're more wired in. You're more astute than I am today. Yeah, so that's a good point. So if one were to think that you have an understanding of emptiness, but you were to be, your mental image of that, you have some kind of mental image of that, or you think you have an experience of that, But if your understanding of that is that it is existing there innately, that is what Nagarjuna said, the greatest, the greatest of faults, because you are enshrining emptiness as being inherently existent or truly existent. So to counter that, one meditates on emptiness itself as being empty of inherent existence. It doesn't have any existence from its own side, as like sometimes people say absolute truth instead of ultimate truth, like it's an absolute thing there. Everything else is non-existent, only emptiness exists. So that when we talk about the various divisions of emptiness, we talk about the emptiness of emptiness itself. Does that help? Is that clear? Babu, would you put it some other way for Ida?
Well, food for thought. I have to think about this dry bones.
Yeah, well, there's a little meat there. Not completely dry bones. Okay. Okay, and I remember Tenzin Jangchub had patiently had his hand up there for a while. Maybe you have a question also, Tenzin?
Well, I was going to offer to maybe rephrase the question. I understood the question slightly differently, not as the emptiness of emptiness, but the question might be how would you, the emptiness of the horns of a rabbit.
Oh,
I thought she was asking about the emptiness of an imputedly non-existent phenomena.
okay, that's even more so. That's more dry bones. Yeah. So existence.
I apologize for that.
No, that's good. That's good. So that's not, I'm not saying that's bad. But the other one had a little, this. So if you talk about when you talk about when Jeffrey Kopkins in his meditation on emptiness, this great big book, I don't have it here. I think he divides. First of all, you start with existence and non-existence. So some things exist, and there are things that we imagine to exist, which are actually non-existent, like the horns of a rabbit or a sky flower. You might say, well, a sky flower, if the flowers are falling from the sky, there's a sky flower. No, that's not what's meant. As though there's a flower that could just grow in space without earth below it. Or another famous example of a non-existent is the son of a barren woman. A barren woman, you might think that someone that is barren, can't have children. You might have this dream about her son. So that's it, that you're thinking about something that doesn't exist. So that is a category. So whether it exists or doesn't exist, all these categories are empty of inherent existence. So there is you can say that there is an emptiness of the son of a barren woman, Okay, the most crucial non-existent is inherent existence itself, or let's say an inherently existent self. You could say that's like the horn of a rabbit, right? It appears to our mind definitely now, if we have not realized emptiness, there does appear to your mind a sense of self that's existing there from its own side without depending on anything else, inherently existent. That is a non-existent, an inherently existent self. We still think about it. We misconceive it. We grasp to it in the same way that someone, visiting the Smokies for the first time sees a rabbit at morning time in the fog and thinks that the ears are horns. The horns of a rabbit don't exist. It's in one, in the same way that the self does not exist. So that is, if that's what Ida was, as she's rethinking about that topic, Tenzin Jiangshup's suggestion, maybe that you can think about that also.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tenzin. And anyone else have something they want to chew on?
I do.
Okay.
Aida, me.
Aida,
Is there a mental image of uncompounded space?
Yeah.
What
If
would
we-
that be?
Mental image. Well, it depends on whether it's a good mental image or a faulty mental image. That is, when I say good, I mean the technical term would be factually concordant. If you've thought about the meaning of uncompounded space, uncompounded space is not something you see with your eye, right?
Right.
You can almost infer that there's some space here. So you move your hand in front and you say, well, it looks like it's there's no obstructing contact there, but oh yeah, there's no glass wall, there's no crystal here. And you can get an understanding mentally of the existence of the lack of obstructing contact here. In the same way that we talk about the lack of obstruction in the mind, when we talk about the clear light nature of the mind, you see how thoughts can enter and leave. If you defocus on them, deprive them of your attention, they begin to dissipate, and you can see that there is see, not with your eye, you can understand that there is a lack of obstruction in the mind. So you get a mental image of that, first of all. You can have a direct realization of uncompounded space, but for most people, that would be, you would have to meditate on that for a long time to get rid of the mental image. Generally, from a Buddhist perspective, even if you have a mental image of selflessness, which is kind of like a mental image of uncompounded space, it is not the actual, the main thing that's appearing to your mind is not emptiness. If you have a mental image of emptiness, what's appearing to your mind is a mental image of that. And it's as though you are knowing emptiness via that mental image. You don't really, it is said in Prasangika, as we will say a little bit later again, the mental image from a Prasangika point of view is comprehended, whereas the lower schools don't usually say that. It's as though you see right through the mental image. But the main thing that you are engaging is emptiness itself. You're knowing it by that mental image. So it depends on whether, but I'll call you in a second, Bob. It depends on whether your mental image is factually concordant, that if you meditate on that again and again, the mental image of emptiness will disappear and you'll actually perceive directly emptiness. Bob.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I sort of wonder if Aida wasn't talking about, again, I mean, if we think about, a real physical object like a flower, in our mind, we can form, an image that seems like the real flower. But if you talk about something like space, which is a pure negation, or emptiness, which is a pure negation, it's sort of the notion of, if you talk about an elephant in the room, you can visualize an elephant in the room. But if you talk about the absence of an elephant in the room, you just visualize a room without an elephant, but it's a little bit harder to do that with space. So can a concept be considered an image? Just an abstract concept, can that be considered an image? Just the same way that we might have a mental image of a real physical object like a flower.
Are you asking me or Ida?
Yes. I'm asking you, how you view, because clearly a mental image of space or emptiness is different than visualizing a real physical object like a flower. So can an abstract concept be considered a mental image, even though you're not visualizing a physical?
Oh yeah. When we say image here, that can give the wrong impression. That's an English translation. The better translation of what is occurring there is meaning generality. So it doesn't have to be visual. Like, for instance, you can have a concept of a sound. You can imagine sound. It might be a remembering consciousness of a sound that you heard, and in some ways could be from the Prasangika point of view, you could call that, if you've actually heard sound before, you have a memory of that, that could be called, remember, we call that evident, or prataksha gunsum, direct, something which is what we called evident or synonymous with manifest. So that could be almost like a direct perception. But if you're just thinking about sound in general, like, I wonder what the sound of a caveman's voice was, or something like that, maybe a concept, that can be a mental image. That's a conceptual thought. In fact, even the remembering consciousness can be conceptual. That is conceptual, the remembering consciousness. So concepts in general, I think, are meaning generalities, if you want to call them mental images. So that's the problem. When you say image, it almost sounds like it's something, when we say, I'm going to show you an image of something, it means something you can see with your eye. Here, mental image doesn't necessarily mean that, although it can be. If you think of your mother's face, that is kind of like you're imagining something which is compatible with sight, right?
Thank you, Venerable. That's exactly what I meant. Not an image itself, but what you refer to, the idea, perhaps the concept that we have.
Okay, so Bob is the designated translator now of questions I don't understand.
Yes, thank you, Bob,
he's wired in. He knows what you're talking about better than I.
Thank you, Bob, for expressing my questions in more clear terms.
What was that famous novel, The Horse Whisperer, or something like that? You're the student whisperer. You're able to get it. So, Raina, you have a qualm or question.
Okay, it seems to me that this abstract concept as a mental image is basically what we're doing all the time anyway. I mean,
yeah.
So separating it from just the general way of things. I mean, we have so many image meaning generalities from images. You wouldn't have advertising without that. So I see that in a day-to-day basis, this concept of something that's abstract gets metamorphosized into things that people do or something like that. So, I can, for the purpose of philosophical discussion, it's one thing. But I mean, for some reason, I've been watching physics videos on YouTube, and there's a whole lot of stuff that nobody knew anything about, that was just someplace else again. And now we're using these things, these quantum things, for the cell phones. I mean, come on,
Yeah, come on. So that's a question you'll want to converse with Bob. He corrected me earlier on when I made some wrong physics statements, even though I studied physics many years ago. So he's the one that you want to go over that with. Again, he's going to be your whisperer there. Okay. Okay.
I could be turning things around a little too much, but it seems
that's good. Any last? Well, is it last? You can ask more. Anything else someone wants to clarify? You all set? Karen, you're okay? David, Tenzin, Victor, Ida, Stephen is off picture. Doris, David, anything? David Maklis, I guess they're okay. Thumbs up doesn't mean they have. Does that mean you have a question either? No. Okay.
No, I'm as lost as I can be. I don't think there's anything we can explain that would get me out of the woods. This probably get me deeper into it. So
Okay. David Lee, anything? Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, that was the thinker pose from the Rodin statue.
Okay, that's the thinker again. Okay, so let's get back. So it was pointed out to me last time that I might have skipped over some things, but let me just continue from where I was, and then I'll go back over these pages again. I think we have enough time to do that. So we talked about the ways of asserting selflessness last time. Now, again, that which some people said, Bob had said maybe or Stephen had said maybe I'd skipped over the beginning. So we'll go over this again. So just to go over section 6 of Prasangika, page 27 of Svensson's translation. The person's emptiness of being self-supporting, a self-sufficient, substantially existent. You could translate self-sufficient as self-supporting, substantially existent, is asserted to be a coarse selflessness of persons. So as I said before, from all of the lower schools, that's considered to be the subtle selflessness of persons. Prasangika says, it is the gross selflessness of persons. It is an innate kind of misconception, the conception of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, but eliminating that from the mind will not cause a cessation of any of the delusions. The subtle selflessness of persons is the person's emptiness of true existence. Here it says the person's emptiness of true establishment, which you can also translate as true existence, is asserted to be the subtle selflessness of persons. It is that realization that can cause a cessation of all of the other delusions. So you might say, well, what about the selflessness of other phenomena? If you've realized the actual selflessness of persons, you've realized that the person, the self, either your own self or the selflessness of others, because when we say selflessness of persons, it means both the selflessness of oneself and the selflessness of others. If you realize that there's no inherently existent self, that same understanding of non-inherent existence can be applied to anything else, like a car or a tree or walking processes and so forth. So it's said that the mind that is realized emptiness, from the Prasangika point of view, the emptiness of persons or the emptiness of phenomena, that can be applied to all other phenomena. The emptiness of a gross object composed of partless particles and the valid cognizer apprehending it being different substances is posited as a coarse selflessness of phenomena. So I've not seen this in any other Tenets text. Maybe some of you have seen it. I think Jason Chucky Gelson has a reason for presenting that. I'll have to ask some of my old Sarah J friends when they debate about that. Generally, that's not considered to, here it says is what does it say? Coarse selflessness of phenomena. So they don't, from Prasangika point of view, we would not accept that subject and object are empty of being different substances as being gross selflessness of phenomena, because that, the Chittamatra or Yogacara Svatantrika point of view, because that doesn't exist. They are different substances, consciousness and the objects that they perceive, they are different substances. So I'm not sure what the didactic reason for that is. Bob, do you have an idea?
I mean, to me, that this is speaking to, it's not the Chittamatra idea. I mean, what it's just saying is that if things are composed of partless particles, we see an object like a table. And so if we impute that object of a unitary thing, object like a table, on all of the particles that make it up, then that's an imposition. I'm wondering if that's what they're talking about.
Well, here it's saying that's not the whole thing. It's saying and the valid cognizer apprehending it as being different substances. The emptiness of that.
Well, in other words, the partless particles, is there a difference between the table, which we conceive of as a unitary object, and the particles that make it up?
Right. That's as we had talked about earlier when we talked about true aspectarians and false aspectarians, whether you perceive a gross object or whether you you only perceive the individual particles of it. Let me leave that for the time being, because the important thing here is that the emptiness of true existence of the aggregates, or the emptiness of the true establishment of the aggregates, the basis of designation, is posited as the subtle selflessness of phenomena. So, go on, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I just had another thought also, and that's the other thought, that actually for the Prasangika, they don't believe in partless particles. They believe that particles always have a direction, north, south, or whatever. And
right.
So maybe that's the other thing they're saying is that no object can be made of partless particles. So in that sense, maybe they're different substances.
Right. So the question is, does anyone else raise that? Does Chandrakirti or Nagarjuna or anyone else raise that as the gross selflessness of phenomena? That's what I'm saying. I've not seen that in any other. There's some, what's the word? Not didactic. There's some educational value in raising that. And Jason Trukey-Gelson may have a very valid reason for raising that, but that's not something I've seen. Generally, we just talk about the selflessness of phenomena, meaning this subtle selflessness of phenomena in Prasangika. When we talked about Svatantrika and Chittamatra, we did talk about a gross selflessness and a subtle selflessness of phenomena. But here, what is being negated both in personal selflessness of persons, and what is negated when you talk about the selflessness of phenomena is the same thing that's being negated, inherent existence. When I say inherent existence, although inherent existence doesn't exist, and you come to the realization when we say negated, it's just like negating the horns of a rabbit. The horns of a rabbit don't exist, but if you have the conception that they do, you call the understanding that doesn't exist as a negation, right? What you're negating in both cases here is the same sense of existence, an inherent kind of existence, a findability within its parts. Whereas in the lower tenets, there's let's say in Chittamatra, you're negating something different. When you talk about this personal selflessness, you're negating a self-supporting, substantially existent person. When you're negating the selflessness of phenomena, you're negating, say in Chittamatra, the fact that the consciousness and the object that it's knowing, they seem to be different substances, but from the Chittamatra point of view, they're empty of being different substances. So here, the same thing is being negated in the selflessness of persons and the selflessness of phenomena, innate existence or true existence. Here it says true establishment, is often translated as true existence. The two subtle selflessnesses, selflessness of person, selflessness of phenomena, are differentiated by way of the basis of emptiness and not by way of the object of negation. That's exactly what I just said. The only reason you call it selflessness of persons is because the object that you're investigating, the basis of the object of negation, is different than phenomena. You know, when you talk about person, although persons are persons phenomena, is a person a phenomenon, Karen?
Yes, I would say yes. A person's a phenomenon.
Okay. You already got, you get a point for the final exam. So person is phenomena, but when you talk about, when you say selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena, in that categorization, phenomena are different than persons. Persons are different than phenomena, although in general, if you just talk about is a person a phenomena, of course it's a phenomena, it's a knowable object and so forth. But in that categorization, they're different. So the two subtle selflessnesses are differentiated by way of the basis of emptiness and not by way of the object of negation, because the refutation of the object of negation, you could say the negation of the object of refutation, true establishment, true existence or inherent existence upon the basis of a person is the subtle selflessness of the person, and the refutation of the object of negation, true existence upon the basis of the aggregates and so forth is the subtle selflessness of phenomena. If I had said that sentence to you 2 months ago when we were starting this course, you might have got a headache. Right now, do you have a headache, or is it sort of clear? Nadine, is that?
It's, I have to think, and then it gets clear, but not immediately.
It's not clear immediately. You have to think about it.
No, not immediately.
Okay. So what it means, just again in simple words. So when you talk about the selflessness of persons, there is a sense of a person that's appearing to your mind. If you search very, very deeply, the subtlemost object of negation is a sense of a self which appears to be, well, it appears. It doesn't mean like it appears to your eye. It seems to be inherently existent. Feels like it's inherently existent. That inherent existence is what's being negated, refuted through logic, and eventually you'll be able to perceive it directly, that there is no inherently existent self. There is the same sense of existence in other phenomena. I've got my little bottle of echinacea here. It seems like it's, it's really, it's really there. It's really there. It's findable somehow. It appears, of course, because it appears, it has a different kind of sense than the person, which is only appears to your mind, so to speak. You might say that you see Nadine, you see her body, or you hear her voice, but generally the sense of Nadine seems to be of a different category than appearance, because it's a non-associated compositional factor, right? Person. Whereas this is a form. These forms also have a sense of inherent existence. They appear to our eyes, or the sound, which is a form, not a visual form, but a form, you could say appears or impinges upon your ear consciousness, is heard by your ear consciousness. They seem to have inherent existence also. To the Buddha's mind, the omniscient mind, which realizes the ultimate nature of phenomena, all these things that we take for granted, like it really appears that way, really appears here this way, it really exists here. All of these to the omniscient mind, which realizes the ultimate nature of phenomena, because the Buddha's mind also realizes the conventional nature of phenomena, but to that aspect of the mind that realizes the ultimate nature of the mind, the only thing that exists, the only thing that appears is vacuity. None of these things exist the way they appear. It's a radical way of thinking. Some of the other Tibetan schools, even Prasangika, even if they enshrine the Prasangika philosophy, it's as though none of this exists at all. All there is vacuity. Any kind of appearance is a total mistake. Lama Tsongkhapa's and sort of a special interpretation of that with the advice of Manjushri is that all of these appearances come about because of our karma, our collective and individual karma, and they do have internal consistency, cause and effect and so forth. Yet in the ultimate analysis, they don't exist the way that they appear. That's why they are called, in Tibetan, what we call conventional truth is kunsop demba. Kunsop means totally concealing. It's when we talk about conventional truths, Jeffrey Hopkins' famous slogan about that was, he called it truth for a jerk. This is truth for a jerk. I say this pencil, this is a good pencil. I don't remember. It's a good name or something. This pencil, oh, this is just a Parker pencil. This pencil seems to be true, right? Yeah, that's my pencil. Yeah, it's there. When I turn my head, I turn back, it's still there. It gets old. It seems like it's true. But the way that it appears is as though it can be found there somewhere within its parts, as though it inherently existed. Actually, it is totally devoid of existing that way. So its mode of appearance as being truly existent or inherently existent, and its mode of existence, which is empty of that, are contrary. So it is actually a falsity. All of these things that we take for granted in the world because they have some sort of consistency over time. When I look out my window, of course, in the spring and summer, the leaves are getting more and more thick, but hour by hour, it seems the same. So it seems to be, there's their inner consistency, but they don't exist that way at all. So that's a radical understanding if you were to realize emptiness. And it, when we talk about renunciation of some cyclic existence, to see that all of these things that seem like, remember the four misconceptions? You remember these four wrong views that that which is actually suffering we conceive of as pleasure. Generally what that means is that pleasant feelings we consider to be real happiness. They're actually the nature of suffering. We conceive of things that are impermanent, we grasp them as permanent. Things that are impure, we grasp as being pure. And things that are actually selfless, we grasp as having a self. Here, that's that final misconception. All of these phenomena actually don't exist the way that they appear. Then the two subtle conceptions of self are differentiated by way of the observed object and not by way of the mode of apprehension. Because observing the basis, the person, and apprehending it to be truly established or inherently existent, truly existent, is posited as a subtle conception of the self of persons. And observing the basis of imputation, the aggregates and so forth, and apprehending them or it to be truly established, truly existent, inherently existent, is posited as the subtle conception of a self of phenomena. So we talk about the conception of a self of phenomena. You can say the self of phenomena. Does the self of phenomena exist, Bob?
Only conceptually.
So does the self of phenomena exist?
No.
Does the conception of a self of phenomena exist?
Yes.
Yes. So when we talk about objects of negation, in one sense, the object of negation is the selflessness, is the self of persons. That is to be what is negated, an inherently existent self. But also, ultimately, what is to be negated through logic or through experience is the conception, because once you've realized emptiness, that mind that conceives of the truly existent person, inherently existent person, also is eradicated, is ceased. When we talk about true cessation, that is what is also ceased, right? All of the misconceptions and so forth. We all together here? Doris? Your head is tilting to one side. You have a question?
It tilts when I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Could you just go over the 4 misconceptions for me, please?
The form, say
The
again?
4 misconceptions.
I think she means the 4 seals of Buddhism.
No, that's what I mean.
Well, there's 2 things. We talk about 4 seals, 4 misconceptions, slightly different, 4 aspects of the First Noble Truth. So when we talk about the 4 seals, not the animal seals, the 4 SEA, spelled the same way, I guess, isn't it? 4 seals. We say that all compounded phenomena are impermanent, right? All contaminated phenomena are suffering. All compounded phenomena are impermanent. All contaminated phenomena are suffering. All phenomena are empty. And nirvana is bliss. Okay, those are called the 4 seals of a Buddhist doctrine. When you talk about the 4 misconceptions, similar, a little bit different. When we grasp that which is permanent, that which is actually impermanent, we grasp it as permanent. That's called permanent grasping. That's kind of like grasping to a truly existent self, right? I mentioned before, Lama Yeshe used to say that if you had a realization of subtle impermanence, it's like an atom bomb to eliminate your delusions. Other than the realization of emptiness is incredibly potent. So we ordinarily, we don't think about it, this computer is permanent, that I'm looking at you through right now, looking at. But there is a mind that grasps that, assents to that appearance, because it's not changing before my eyes. The appearance on it, of course, the pictures on it, if I watch a movie or something like that, are changing. But the computers here, it doesn't seem to be changing moment by moment. That's called permanent grasping. So that's one of the misconceptions, grasping that which is actually impermanent as permanent, grasping that which is suffering, conceiving it as being happiness, as being, pleasure or happiness. Grasping that which is impure, like say the body as being pure. So if you relate that to the other one, the first two sound the same, impermanence and suffering. Here, we talk about the four seals, all phenomena are empty. And here it's saying grasping to that which is impure, grasping it as pure. What that means is if you look at the body is comprised of many parts. Your general feeling about it because of your experience might be that that's an object of pleasure. But if you look at its parts with in your mind's eye, if you take off the skin with the scalpel of your mind, and I'm not saying you should do this, cut your body open, but if you look at the parts, the bones, the flesh, the mucus, the urine, the excrement. Lama Zopa used to use a word for all of the things that come out of your orifices: caca, nose caca, ear caca, there's something, eye caca in the morning if you have to get that stuff out of your eye. All of these things, if you investigate them, especially if you open up the body, you can't find anything that's pure. That purity is just something that you're grasping to. So that's related to being empty, in the sense of being empty of parts. If you actually realize that it has parts and you investigate those parts, you don't find any purity there. And all phenomena are selfless, meaning empty of inherent existence. Does that help, Doris? I'm not sure if that's exactly what you wanted.
Yes, it is. I wasn't thinking of the four seals. It was just you'd quickly gone through a list and I'd missed the impure as pure.
Right,
So.
right. So it is related to that other list, but you have to understand the relationship of empty, meaning empty of parts. Generally, we think of empty as meaning emptiness, but when we talk about those four misconceptions, we talk about the four aspects of the First Noble Truth. We talk about that. Okay, so then on page 28, presentation of the grounds and paths. Objects of abandonment and the actual presentation of the grounds and paths. We're almost at the end here. So the objects of abandonment, the coarse and subtle conceptions of a self, together with their seeds, and you could say the three poisons, or here it says attachment and so forth, that arise due to the force of those conceptions, together with their seeds, are the afflictive obscurations. Afflictive or deluded obscurations. They are posited as obstructions that mainly prevent the attainment of liberation. They are posited as the obscurations that mainly prevent the attainment of liberation. So from a Prasangika point of view, if you have realized emptiness, that's the cure to these objects of abandonment, the coarse and subtle conceptions of a self. If you realize emptiness, you can achieve liberation. If you realize emptiness, can you achieve omniscience, Buddhahood, enlightenment? Rowena, what's missing? You have to unmute, because what you're saying, I don't understand sign language. There you go.
I know that there's another piece and I can't think of the words right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we say we talk about the afflicted obstructions here, means the conception of a self, of persons, doesn't mean that's, and the self of phenomena. If you realize they're empty of that, you can achieve liberation, nirvana. But you can't necessarily achieve enlightenment with that alone. What you need is a method to get rid of the obstructions to omniscience also. So two kinds of obstructions. Obstructions to liberation, which are called the afflictive obstructions, which you can get rid of by realizing emptiness. The other kind of obstruction is called the obstruction to omniscience. To do that, you do have to have the realization of emptiness. But in addition to that, you need a fine scouring powder of having eliminated the self-cherishing thought. Yeah. You have to have bodhicitta fully developed. And once the bodhisattvas realize emptiness, of course, you might think that you get rid of the self-cherishing thought. What do you think, Bob? When you get rid of when you have bodhicitta, have you eliminated the self-cherishing thought? You're working for the welfare of others? Bob, you're thinking?
Well, I think when you have full bodhicitta, spontaneous bodhicitta, then day and night you are thinking about the welfare of others. Although I've never heard that talked about as a subtle obstruction to omniscience. So I'm a little confused by what you're saying there.
Right. So
I've always been told that the subtle obstruction to omniscience is, I think, what they call the vasana, sort of the scent of the other obstructions.
Right. The
and it's also the appearance of everything as being inherently existent, even though you know it's not. Right. It still appears to your mind. Right. And I've always heard of those.
Yeah, that's true. But what is the method that you can get rid of those?
You continue to meditate on emptiness.
Right, but even the hearers and solitary realizers meditate on emptiness. No matter how long they meditate on emptiness, never having developed bodhicitta, there is no way that they can get rid of those obstructions to omniscience. All right.
This is
so there's two different things. There's the obstruction. The object of abandonment, like you say, is we say the latencies or the imprints of self-grasping, and the appearance of phenomena to be inherently existent, even to our senses, even till the last moment of a 10th level bodhisattva before they achieve enlightenment. In post-meditation, when they're not meditating on emptiness, what appears to them, everything appears to be inherently existent. How to get rid of those is, in addition to having realization of emptiness, you need to have bodhicitta.
There's a 5.
Wait, Raina, you're still.
I'm muttering because I have somewhere a chart that shows those steps up through bodhicitta, and I can't find it.
Okay, you look for that. Bob's got another point.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I've heard also, of course, is that you have to create the merit to achieve full Buddhahood. And for that, you do need bodhicitta to create that almost infinite amount of merit to achieve that realization. So I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about.
That is invalid. Like in the earlier tenets, we talked about the difference between the hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattvas who go on to achieve enlightenment. We said that the hearers had a small accumulation of merit over a certain number of lives, 3 or 16 lives. The Pratika Buddhas maybe of over 100 eons, and the bodhisattvas 3 countless great eons of collection of merit. But merit is the cause of the Nirmanakaya. It's a substantial cause of the Nirmanakaya, the physical manifestations of the Buddha. The collection of wisdom, on the other hand, is the substantial cause of achieving the wisdom body of the Buddha, the Dharmakaya, the wisdom Dharmakaya. So to achieve enlightenment, you have to get rid of not only the obstructions to liberation, the afflictive obstructions, and the way you do that is meditating on emptiness. That's the hearers and solitary realizers realize from Prasangika point of view, they realize the emptiness of the self and the emptiness of phenomena. But that is not enough to get rid of the latencies in the mind, the appearance of true existence and so forth. And there are some other examples also, the untoward actions, even the arhats would sometimes spontaneously do things, a quirk or something like this. They would have some errors of body, speech, and mind. All of these are called the objects to be abandoned for omniscience. So how do you get rid of them? In addition to emptiness, you need to have a mind which is overcome the self-cherishing thought. Now, generally speaking, when you have bodhicitta, the gross selflessness, the gross self-cherishing is eliminated. But according to Buddhist tenets, Prasangika, Tenbumi Sutra, other sutras, the self-cherishing thought is not totally eliminated until the 8th bhumi. The last three bhumis are called the pure bhumis, the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis. The grounds, the 10th, we talk about the 10 grounds of the Bodhisattva. On those pure grounds, those pure bhumis, one begins to eliminate the obstructions to omniscience, these imprints and so forth. The only way that you reach that point is, as Bob has mentioned, accumulating merit through bodhicitta and all of the general kinds of activities that strengthen the mind, realizing emptiness. But because of having bodhicitta, that acts as an additional kind of scouring powder, like the example I gave some time of first taking out at Thanksgiving dinner, your job is to clean out the pot in which the potatoes were boiled in. So first of all, you take out with your hand maybe the stuff that's stuck to the side, the peels and some of the potatoes that are there. And then you use maybe that, the blue sponge with a coarse thing on one side to get that out. And then you use a finer Scotch-Brite thing to get it out. And then you add some more soap and you clean the surface, but still maybe there's some odor if you put garlic in there. To get out that final stuff, you have to use a scouring powder and some other stuff. So that's kind of like the bodhicitta that has to be within your mind stream to get out those final stains. The coarse and subtle conceptions of a self, so that means not just self of a person, but self of phenomena, together with their seeds and the attachment and so forth that arise due to the force of those conceptions. Someone talking? Together with their seeds are the afflictive obstructions. They are posited as obstructions that mainly prevent the attainment of liberation. The latencies or the imprints of the conception of true existence and all factors of mistaken dualistic appearance. Here, dualistic appearance doesn't mean that as before in Chittamatra, dualistic appearance meant that there's an appearance of the substance of the mind and the substance of the things that it's knowing they seem to be different, whereas they are one. Here, dualistic appearance means that phenomena seem to be existing from their own side. The latencies of the conception of true existence and all the factors of mistaken dualistic appearance that arise due to the force of those latencies are obstructions to knowledge. They are posited as obstructions that mainly prevent the attainment of omniscience. Tenzin Gyatso has very patiently had his hand up for a long time. Sorry.
No problem. My question is there a difference between self-cherishing and self-grasping in this concept, in
Yes.
this context?
Yes. So,
yeah.
If you were to say to a Theravada practitioner who is, is like staunch Republican, staunch Democrat, or staunch Theravada, they would say, oh no, Arhats don't have any self-cherishing. They have great compassion for all sentient beings. There's different. Having great compassion, first of all, there's two different meanings. In the Hinayana, Theravada, great compassion means great means for all sentient beings, compassion for all sentient beings, and also means for all levels of suffering, compassion even for the rich and famous, Arhats have great compassion from the Theravada point of view. But in the Mahayana, great compassion means taking the onus upon oneself to eliminate that suffering, which the Hinayana Arhats, the practitioners before they're Arhats, don't have. They do social work, of course, they eliminate, but they don't stick around in cyclic existence out of this responsibility to eliminate the suffering of sentient beings. Given at the point of death, even with the great compassion defined by the Theravada, they still feel compassion for all sentient beings, no one left out. They have compassion for every level of suffering, even what looks to be pleasure, but they're not going to stick around within cyclic existence to work for their welfare. So self-cherishing is, you could say, is an imprint of self-grasping. It's actually, it is not eliminated totally from the mind stream until the eighth bhumi. In the eighth bhumi, at the eighth bhumi of the Bodhisattva path, all of the self-grasping has been eliminated from the mind. And it's only at that point that technically speaking, all of the self-cherishing is finally abandoned from the mind. Bob, what do you think? You haven't heard that before.
Yeah, so self-grasping, by eliminating self-grasping, is that equivalent in your meaning of it to really a realization of emptiness? I'm not, because when I think of self-grasping, I think of finally having gotten rid of the grasping at a self. And so to me, that's different than self-cherishing, which is sort of more of an ego thing. I'm just thinking of myself first all the time.
Right. Okay. So
and so I would say that maybe when you start to have a direct realization of emptiness, then you're starting to get rid of self-grasping.
You are starting to get rid of self-grasping, right? That's the crucial point. So on the path of seeing, the first bhumi of the 10 bhumis, because the bhumis only start when you've realized emptiness directly. Before that, you're on the path of accumulation, the path of preparation. On the path of seeing, you've entered into the first bhumi and you begin to cease self-grasping. It's not all eliminated at that time. First, the intellectually formed self-grasping is eliminated, and one is free of certain of the delusions, certain of the afflictions. Sequentially, through the path of meditation, then, as you meditate again and again on emptiness, more and more subtle levels of self-grasping are eliminated. All of those are ceased. So you have true cessations. You have true cessation on the path of seeing, but that's true cessation of some of the delusions, intellectually formed. On the path of meditation, you start to get rid of the innate delusions, layer by layer, up until the 8th bhumi. And the end of the 7th bhumi and the Vajra-like, the end of that continuum of the 7th bhumi, uninterrupted path, you eliminate all of, you cease the final subtlemost self-grasping. Okay, so as a distinction, and so in the last 3 bhumis, the 8th, 9th, and 10th, you're actually ceasing, you start to eliminate, to abandon the obstructions to omniscience. The only way that you can, simply having, say, the hearer and solitary realizer, even if they stayed around still meditating on emptiness for eons, if they were able to extend their lifespans for some reason, they would not eliminate the obstructions to omniscience with emptiness alone. You need that extra scouring powder of bodhicitta. So from my point of view, when you think about Tantra, when you talk about the airs, the winds, the prana, when you reach the state of omniscience, your prana, and therefore your mind, because the two are inextricably linked, the subtle wind and the subtlemost mind, subtlemost wind, subtlemost mind are inseparable. So in the time of omniscience, as the body is omnipresent, the wind, the subtlemost wind, fills all existence. Also, your mind is there. It's not like you have to send your mind out there. It's there all the time. That kind of evolution comes about because of taking into consideration the welfare of all sentient beings, not just centered here. That's just my kind of interpretation like that. So, although it seems that the main impediment to developing bodhicitta is a self-cherishing thought, the mind that considers one's own welfare more important than others, there's still that bodhicitta becomes more and more refined as you go along. In the Abhisamaya Lamkara, the commentary to the Prajnaparamita, it says there are 22 different kinds of bodhicitta, different qualities of it as you go through the bhumis. It is said in the Uttara Tantra and other texts that bodhicitta, self-cherishing thought, is not totally abandoned until you reach the 8th bhumi, the same time that you abandon the last visages of self-grasping. Even though before that, the bodhisattva, working only for the welfare of others, thinking totally of the welfare of others, because of the fact that there's still self-grasping until the 8th bhumi, there's still the potential for them to develop self-cherishing. So it's said not to be totally abandoned until the 8th bhumi. Very subtle point in the Prasangika, in Uttara Tantra, other texts. You have to look in various texts to find these things, as Geshe Zopa, when he taught us at Deer Park, would elaborate. So it is said that even the 8th level, the 7th level bodhisattvas they have vision of the Buddhas, encouraging them not to remain in meditative equipoise, but to work for the welfare of sentient beings, even though they don't have any tendency to work for their own self at that point, because it is not, there's still the potential for them to develop self-cherishing. Okay, Tenzin La, you have a question.
So does that mean that on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, the pure bhumis, that the meditation is to eliminate self-cherishing? And
No, that's already, now that's been abandoned upon entry into the 8th bhumi. At the end of the 7th bhumi, the self-cherishing is totally abandoned, even though, as Bob was saying, it seems like they were, they weren't working for the welfare of themselves before that, but there's still the potential until the self-grasping is eliminated. So at the point of the entering into the 8th bhumi, both the self-grasping is ceased and the self-cherishing is abandoned, but both of them are abandoned. So on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, one is eliminating the obstructions to omniscience. You do not eliminate any, from the Prasangika point of view, none of the obstructions to omniscience are eliminated until the 8th bhumi, 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumi. Some of the lower tenets say, like Chittamatra and Svatantrika say, the obstructions to omniscience are abandoned sequentially from the first bhumi and so forth. Prasangika says it is not that way. They only abandon when you reach those pure bhumis. Okay. So the latencies of the conception of true establishment, true existence, the imprints of those, and all factors of mistaken dualistic appearance that arise through the force of those, as well as what are called the untoward actions, and all are obstructions to knowledge. They are posited as obstructions that mainly prevent the attainment of omniscience. Tenzin Jagdrupla. Tenzin, you have another
Oh,
question?
no, I didn't lower my hand.
Oh, okay. Well, you take it off so that, because if you have another question, I want to be able to address that. So, okay. So then, is that okay? Nadine, you get the gist? Okay. Doris? David is nodding. Karen is smiling. Bob is still thinking. And I can't tell what's on Kevin's mind, or Ida or Rowena. Stephen, you okay? Okay. Okay. So last section here, actual presentation of the grounds and paths. There is no difference in terms of superiority among the views that are the objects of meditation of persons of the three vehicles, because all three are similar in taking the subtle selflessness of persons and the subtle selflessness of phenomena as their main objects of meditation. So here there's controversy with other Tibetan schools, not talking about the 4 schools of tenets, but even the other schools that talk about Prasangika. Some Kargyu, Sakya, Nyingma, they say that you can achieve liberation. You can achieve a liberation by realizing the selflessness, the gross selflessness of persons and so forth. Here, from the Prasangika point of view, as Lama Tsongkhapa exemplified, and other scholars of other schools also accepted later, to achieve liberation, you have to realize emptiness. We said that before, but it's coming in the text explicitly. You have to realize the subtle selflessness of phenomena, the subtle selflessness of persons. There's no difference. If you realize one, you will realize the other, because what's being negated is inherent existence. When you've realized emptiness on one subject, one object, all you have to do is turn your mind to anything else, use the same reasoning, and you realize the emptiness of that. There are differences when we talk about the hearers, solitary realizers, and the three vehicles and so forth. There are differences with respect to their main objects of abandonment, because hearers and solitary realizers take the two conceptions of the self of person, self of phenomena, together with their seeds as their main objects of abandonment. Whereas the bodhisattvas take the latencies of those conceptions as their main objects of abandonment. So what they're aiming for is to, on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, to eliminate the obstructions to omniscience. And so therefore, at the beginning, phrased in a different way, the main object at the beginning of the bodhisattvas is not taking meditation on emptiness as their main concern, but developing bodhicitta, because the bodhicitta is what is going to be able to allow them on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis to eliminate the obstructions to omniscience. The suchness, another synonym for emptiness, right? The suchness that is qualified by the abandonment of the two conceptions of a self, together with their seeds, in the continuum of a hearer or solitary realizer, arhat, foe destroyer, in meditative equipoise, is a nirvana without remainder. Oh boy. Whereas such a suchness in the continuum of a hearer or solitary realizer, foe destroyer, in post equipoise, is a nirvana with remainder. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Let me see your eyes. I can't see. Only some people are looking at me with their eyes. David is pretending he's looking at me, but he's got some tinted glasses on. Okay, so before, when we talked about the lower schools, we talked about, in classical Buddhism, we talk nirvana with remainder and nirvana without remainder. What was meant was, in that context, in the lower schools especially, when you become an arhat, you have attained nirvana, right? You're still alive. And it's said that first you achieve nirvana with remainder, meaning remainder of the contaminated aggregates. Your mind has ceased all delusions, all afflictions. It doesn't experience any unhappiness, but you still have a remainder of the contaminated aggregates, which are the results of your birth, that final lifetime, which came about because of contaminated actions in previous lifetimes. So first you attain a nirvana with remainder of the contaminated aggregates. And then at the time of death, when your mind leaves this body, you've left behind the remainder of the contaminated aggregates. For the lower tenets, that's called nirvana without remainder. So from the point of view, once that has been attained, depends on if you're talking about the Hinayana tenets, the mind ceases, so there's no one who has actually attained nirvana without remainder. There is someone who is approaching that, and the final moments before you die, you were approaching nirvana without remainder. And then when you die, your mind is snuffed out, so there's no person there that's actually attained nirvana without remainder, right? Chittamatra and Svatantrika Madhyamaka, they do have some people who accept that the mind continues after that. So they could posit someone who has achieved a nirvana without remainder, like the hearer who is now meditating on emptiness, for eons before they're awakened by the Buddhas to enter into the Bodhisattva path. However, here in the Prasangika, different meaning, remainder and nirvana with remainder and without remainder. When the Hinayana practitioner achieves nirvana, they become an arhat. And that's different than an arya, right? They've realized emptiness first in the path of seeing, eliminated all of the self-grasping, all of the delusions. With all of the delusions, all of the self-grasping is abandoned, they become an arhat. They're still alive, okay? while in that meditative equipoise, when they've actually achieved the final cessation of all the delusions, all that's appearing to their mind is emptiness. There is no appearance of inherent existence to their mind. They have a direct realization of emptiness. There's no grasping to that. And that is called a nirvana without the remainder of dualistic appearance, without the remainder of the appearance of inherent existence. So that's attained first. Then when they arise from that meditative equipoise, things appear to them as truly existent, inherently existent again, to their eyes, their ears, their nose, their tongue, so forth, even to their mind. There's the appearance of inherent existence. So that is called nirvana with remainder. Does that make sense? You have to think about it. The suchness, that means the emptiness that's being realized, that is qualified by the abandonment of the two conceptions of the self. Here, the two conceptions means self of persons and phenomena. So they've realized emptiness together with their seeds in the continuum of a hearer or solitary realizer, foe destroyer. That's an English translation of arhat. So they're someone who's become an arhat at that moment, in that meditative equipoise, is a nirvana without remainder. That means without a remainder of the appearance of inherent existence. Anytime when they're not in that meditative equipoise after that, that is called nirvana with remainder, because there's a remainder of the appearance of inherent existence. If they go into meditative equipoise again, they can alternate, then they can enter into, again, nirvana without remainder. And then they can rise, as long as they're alive. When they pass away, you could say there is a difference then with parinirvana. That would be parinirvana, final nirvana would mean when they passed away. For those of the great vehicle lineage, Mahayanas, who are definite in that lineage from the beginning, the complete abandonment of the afflictive obstructions, occurs simultaneously with the attainment of the eighth ground, right? When they reach the eighth ground, the first of the three pure bhumis. The impure bhumis are the first to the seventh bhumi. The pure bhumis are the eighth, ninth, and 10th. The complete abandonment of the afflictive obstructions occurs simultaneously with the attainment of the eighth ground, the eighth bhumi, and the complete abandonment of the obstructions to knowledge occurs simultaneously with actualizing the four bodies. So at the moment, what was called the Vajra-like meditative stabilization at the end of the continuum, kind of like the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree when he achieved enlightenment, right? In that final meditative equipoise, all of the obstructions to omniscience are abandoned at that very moment, at that same instant. They have the attainment of the four bodies. What are the four bodies? You know, Nadine, you know the four bodies?
I know Dharmakaya, Sambogakaya, Nirmanakaya, but I don't know the fourth name. I don't know.
Okay, so we can go this way. One way to remember is that from one point of view, there's two bodies: Rupakaya, form body, and Dharmakaya, wisdom body, or Dharma body, truth body. If you divide up the Rupakaya, there's two: Nirmanakaya and Sambogakaya. Those are the two. You did mention those two, right? Nirmanakaya is what the Buddhas exhibit to ordinary beings with good karma. Not everyone sees the Nirmanakaya. Even when Buddha was around, Shakyamuni Buddha was around, some people didn't see the actual Nirmanakaya. They just, because of their obstructions, they saw faults and so forth. The Sambogakaya is a subtler body that doesn't appear on the earth, but it resides in a pure land and teaches Arya Bodhisattvas only. Only teaches beings who realized emptiness on the Bodhisattva path. Of the Dharmakaya, there are two kinds of Dharmakaya. Wisdom Dharmakaya, which means the omniscient mind, and what's called the Svavavikakaya, or nature body, which means the emptiness of the Buddha's mind. Those are called the four bodies. So all four of those are attained simultaneously with abandoning the last obstructions to omniscience, and the Vajra-like meditative equipoise at the end of the continuum of an ordinary being. One becomes, ordinary beings, say, non-Buddha. Something to look forward to. Okay. So just quickly, some had said I had left off, I think on page 26, the definition of ultimate truth. I alluded to this before. From the Prasangika point of view, the definition of an ultimate truth, or ultimate truth, ultimate truth, an object found by a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate. That's actually sufficient if you talk about anyone other than the Buddha. Ordinary beings, you could say an ultimate truth is that which is found by a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate. What is a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate? It means when you, let's say, looking at the selflessness of persons, when you have recognized how the self seems to be appearing to the mind as inherently existent. You've actually found the object of negation in your meditation. It looks like that, and you can, if you're if you have astute mind, you can see how the mind is kind of agreeing with that. Yeah, that's reasonable. In that meditative equipoise, when you apply wisdom, penetrative insight, vipassana, within that concentration, and you analyze, could it exist that way? And you use the various reasonings that prove emptiness. That's called ultimate analysis. You're analyzing whether something exists inherently or not. That's called ultimate analysis. If you talk about the Buddha's mind, it's a little bit different, because the one instant of the Buddha's mind analyzes or has that wisdom of emptiness, and has a wisdom that realizes conventionalities, how things appear to sentient beings. The Buddha realizes how phenomena appear to sentient beings as inherently existent. There is no appearance to the Buddha's mind of phenomena existing inherently from his own side. Nothing appears inherently existent to the Buddha's mind. But by knowing the minds of sentient beings, having that clairvoyance that knows their minds, their mind streams, he knows how it appears to them. That's how conventionalities appear to the Buddha's mind. So that to account for the Buddha's omniscient mind, the extra phrases. So the first part, the definition of an ultimate truth is an object found by a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate. And if you include the Buddha in that, how the Buddha's mind, and with respect to which that valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate becomes a valid cognizer analyzing the ultimate. Those phrases have to be added. The divisions of ultimate truths are similar to those in the context of the Chittamatra, proponents of mind only. That is to say, there are 18 emptinesses in most extensive, talking about, including emptiness of emptiness, is with regard to Bob's clarification of Ida's question. There's division of 16, 4, and you could even say 2 ultimate truths, you know, the emptiness of phenomena and the emptiness of persons. Only, mind only. However, in this context, it is asserted that true cessations are necessarily ultimate truths. So here's one last final point. We're just at 2 minutes over here, so I'll just give this last point. When you talk about true cessations, what is a true cessation? Who's still there? We're Tenzin Gyatso. What is a true cessation?
I can't give you probably a succinct definition, but I would say a true cessation is actually when your mind actually gets at the emptiness of any of your afflictive concepts, and when you get at the emptiness at it, you never go back to it. You realize it's non-existent, and there's no more tendency, or you don't ever spend any energy with something that you realize doesn't exist anymore. And your mind
in kind of the right direction there. A true cessation. So what is being ceased? One of the afflictive obscurations, right? It is ceased, what is called an analytical cessation, so that it will never come back in the future. That is a true cessation. So on the path of seeing, when you've realized emptiness directly for the first time, there are a certain number of the afflictions that are ceased, so they will never come back again. Not all of them at that point. Then as you meditate again on the path of meditation, more and more of the afflictive obscurations are ceased. You have true cessations. So you have true cessations at various points, up until the time you in the Hinayana path, you become an arhat, or from the Mahayana path, when you enter into the 8th bhumi, when you have the total cessation of all of them. So those true cessations, in this context, it is asserted that true cessations are necessarily ultimate truths. Generally, in the lower schools, true cessations are conventional truths. It's just the mere elimination of afflictions, so they'll never come back again, right? When you think about what is that? Is that something you can conceive of? You know, how it appears to the mind? Generally, for the lower schools, true cessations are conventional truths. Remember, all phenomena are either conventional truths or ultimate truths, from at least from the Mahayana point of view. All phenomena are conventional truths or ultimate truths. But from the Prasangika point of view, it's mentioned in the Ten Bhumi Sutra, Tara Tantra, other of the Mahayana sutras. What true cessation means is the emptiness of the mind which has ceased those afflictions. Let's say even on the path of seeing, you have a certain true cessation of the intellectually formed delusions, right? Intellectually formed afflictions. That, from the lower school's point of view, that is a conventional truth. It's just the mere absence of those, so they'll never return. From the Prasangika point of view, the true cessation is labeled to the emptiness of the mind in which those afflictions are ceased. So, because it's the emptiness of the mind in which those afflictions have ceased, it's an ultimate truth. that's a really thorny question for a lot of people. How is a true cessation an ultimate truth? I thought only emptiness was emptiness. Emptiness was ultimate truth. Yes, only emptiness is ultimate truth. But true cessations are defined by Prasangika as the emptiness of the mind in which afflictions have a true cessation, have been ceased so that they'll never return again. Wow, that's a good point to end. So I think Shanka or Bob or someone will get in touch with you if anyone's interested in taking the exam. I think there was only one. I think only Tenzin Jangchu had thought to take the exam before. But I'd like to, those of you who were here when Shanka gave a little encouragement, generally it's a little bit like the fire puja at the end of a retreat. You can feel like it's finished. You don't have to think about it. You know, you didn't do something, you didn't. So taking the exam is a very good culmination. It gives you a chance to go over the material, do your best, get it under your belt. Is that what we say in English? Put it, what do we say? Get it under your belt. I don't know, again, some expression like that. You know, you're finished with tenets. So I would encourage, it's not going to be difficult. As I mentioned at the beginning, some people were asking questions. There'll be some essays, some multiple choice, maybe yes or no questions. Maybe there'll be 15 questions and you can choose 10. So you can, you know, just go over the material. The exam will be sometime in the middle of June. And if there's enough interest, I'd even be willing to come. And Bob may be happy to answer some of your questions, but we could even have one review session before that. But you would get the exam. You can take it at your leisure, maybe an hour and a half, I'm not sure. And you don't have any books at that time. You can't look at any books. Okay, there's some exams when they say you could, you know, you're searching through, you just use your memory, and I think that would be nice. We will start Lorik July 10th for 8 weeks, and then there will be a week or two break, and maybe, I'm not sure how many weeks, and then we'll do another 8 weeks on the mind and mental factors. So hopefully more people will be, as that material will have more ability to go in depth, little more accessible, psychological. I would really hope that you would take that for the certificate. Lama Yeshe used to say, with respect to this master's, when we talked about the master's program, here the basic program, you can become a master of one subject. You can become a certificate holder in Lorig or Tenets or whatever, and then later you might be qualified to teach them. Okay, so let's do Stephen.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, George, Venerable George. And may I have the students who are interested, or at least know they're interested now, just put their email in a direct message to me, just so that we can get in touch through the sender and make sure that you know about the exam. So that just pop that into the chat, please.
That means you, David.
Your email.
Okay, so let's do a little final dedication. We've created so much virtue this last many weeks, months. Sit comfortably. Bring back a remembering consciousness of the clear light nature of your mind to settle it. Undistracted by other thoughts, recognize that we've created a great deal of merit that will have a pleasant result within cyclic existence. Dedicate these merits to this final goal of the Buddhist path, the Mahayana path, the achievement of enlightenment, because it's from that state of enlightenment, of being Buddha, that we can effortlessly, spontaneously lead all sentient beings without error to enlightenment, as long as it takes. You might think sometime, there's no one leading me or others to enlightenment now. I don't see any progress. It takes a long time. The omniscient Buddha, the omniscient mind knows exactly how to lead people sequentially from life to life, even if they don't realize they're being guided. Due to these merits, and whatever way they ripen may become the cause of my continued spiritual evolution from life to life, up to and including enlightenment, for the sake of all sentient beings. And rejoice, thinking this is Sakadawa, the energy that I've created, multiplied this month. Due to the merits of these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead each and every living being, without exception, into that enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, the source of every single benefit and happiness in the world. May the holy wishes of the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serves as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, I beseech you, please live long, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Venerable Tenzin Osel Hita, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, for those wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us in intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, Spain, we make this request. O Lama, please live long. So thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun and pleasure and honor to have a chance to think about tenets again and to share this time with you. Hope that you might be interested in continuing with our low rig and the mind and mental factors. If you know of other people, you might tell them they can join, and maybe our class will be a little larger next time. So thank you very much.
See, Venerable George, we wish to do Thanksgiving mandala.
Oh, right, yes.
At the end of your class.
Yes.
I think Stephen was going to lead that.
Yes. So I see.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Venerable George. You know, I was saying at the top of the class, just how wonderful your kindness and generosity to share all of this information with us, and your wisdom. And certainly I, at least myself, appreciate your patience as well.
Thanks for being patient.
Over these somewhat abstruse concepts again and again to help us understand them. So if I might, I would like to offer a Thanksgiving mandala on behalf of, well, of course, Bob, who's done a wonderful job as the BP assistant, all of the students, and also on behalf of the center. So this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it May all living beings enjoy this pure land. May my venerable Lama's life be firm, his white divine actions spread in the 10 directions. May the torch of the teachings of Losang always remain, dispelling the darkness of all beings in the 3 realms. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Thank you so much, Venerable George.
Thank you. And just as a clarification, when it says, may the torch of the teachings of Losang, thank you, Doris. Losang means short for Losang Drakpa, which was the ordination name of Lama Tsongkhapa. You probably have heard that before, but you might think, who's Losang? Teachings of Losang. Losang Drakpa. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you.